Okay, good evening and welcome everybody to the Village of Webberville Council meeting. Today is June 10th, 2025. We're going to call the order here and start with a roll call.
Hewitt?
Here.
Schoenberg? Here. Stanfield? Here. Walter? Here. Schulte?
Here. All right, everybody please stand for the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Is there approval for the agenda this evening?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Seconded. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, just as a quick reminder, this is our first meeting since our new format. So for public comment, everybody will be given, who wants to speak, 3 minutes uninterrupted. We will not be taking questions or answering those at that time. If there's time afterwards, I will try to answer things that I can quickly. Anything else, we will try to get back to you by the end of the week with remaining answers on those. So with that said, we will open up for public comment at 6:01. Any comments from the public? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close public comment at 6:02. And I have no comments myself. Is there approval for the consent agenda? That's the minutes for the May 27th council meeting, accounts payable, investment report, revenue and expenditure report, and the balance sheet.
I make a motion to accept consent.
Second.
Second, roll call.
Hewitt?
Yes.
Schoenberg?
Yes.
Stanfield?
Yes.
Walter? Yes. Schulte?
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to reports. We do not have the sheriff present this evening, but he did provide us a report. Council can read on their own time. Next would be the DPW report.
For the month of May, we did schedule our hydrant flow testing. That has to be done as part of our water system reliability study. So that's going to take place the week of June 24th. So you may notice some cloudy water. You'll see us out running a whole bunch of hydrants in town. That just proves our water flow for firefighting purposes. Again, this digs for any digging in your yards, gardens, flowers, whatever. And do not remove flags if they're in your yard. Can't have that be happening. So you can call or email any potholes. We've been filling them as fast as we possibly can. So just holler if you see one or if you need some maintenance done. Tower maintenance was taking place this week. Our water tower was taken offline yesterday and we drained it. Today the inspection was done and everything looks good on the inside of the tower. So we're good there. Right now I'm rechlorinating it. Tomorrow I can take water samples and hopefully put the water tower back in service on Thursday. Truck and equipment repairs, they're ongoing. Trying to keep Sam informed every time something goes down. So we're trying to get ahead of the game on that. And then I did talk to the contractor. They are planning on doing our road patches next Monday and Tuesday, as long as the weather cooperates. So as of right now, it looks like it should, but they do have us scheduled. So that is all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Ryan. Any questions from the council for DPW? None? We'll move on.
I got one.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Ryan, I just noticed the other day that Party Road East, almost to Graham Road, it appears a homeowner painted the fire hydrant black.
Yeah, it's been like that for years.
Well, I mean, is that normal? We can just change color of fire hydrants because we don't like the color in our yard?
Technically, no. There are no official rules against it. We can set our own hydrant colors that should be painted yellow. That was approved previous administration.
Oh,
Like
so
I
it
said,
was approved? I mean, it was something that was brought up to council and
I was
addressed?
informed that it was because the individual also painted his hydrant in his yard black as well. So I've kind of been looking at it, it bothers me, I just haven't decided how I want to approach it yet, because all of our hydrants need painting. So I'm looking at possibly, if not next fiscal year, the year after, having all of our hydrants wire brushed, sandblasted, and painted as part of my water system maintenance. So I was just kind of dragging my feet on that black one for now, until I get to that point.
Well, my thoughts are, the fire trucks are looking for a hydrant right there in the middle of the night,
Yep,
it's not gonna stand out.
nope.
So I mean, what's it take to go out there with a can of?
Our
caution
hydrant
yellow?
colors are yellow.
Right, I'm aware, so why can't we just go out and throw yellow paint on it and say, it's ours, it's not yours?
Jessica, are you aware of when we may have made that, when the council may have voted on that?
No, I didn't know that was a thing.
Okay.
Yeah. I was just kind of told that in passing from the previous individual that sat in your seat there.
Yep.
And that's why his was painted black as well. So, like I said, I have a game plan, so I just kind of been dragging my feet on that battle. If council so wishes, I'll have it painted this week. So I have no problems doing it because they are supposed to be yellow. So,
All right, I said my piece.
Well, and another thing is that it can't be painted right away. Is there some kind of like caution flag that we could put?
oh, it can be
near or
painted right away.
something?
I can have yellow paint on it by the end of this week.
Yeah, at the very least, we should try to find record of where that vote took place.
Yeah.
And in the absence of that, then probably just needs to be discussion with the homeowners to how to proceed.
They are the new homeowners, they are not the ones that are responsible for painting it, because that house did just sell. So it was not them that did it,
Okay.
so.
It's in the village right away, it's technically.
It's our hydrant,
not
they
theirs,
do
so.
not own it, we own that, so.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions for Ryan? All right, we will move on to the clerk treasurer report.
I just want to give everybody an update. Carol is doing very well down there. She's learning and catching on really fast. She's entered the APs and has been doing it on her own, and I'm just double checking afterwards. And then trying to get more separation of duties. We will focusing on more cross-training in the building department program soon. We have started the audit prep process, and our timeline is to have the draft presented at the last August meeting. We have also begun the process for taxes, and they will be going out to the mail the last day of June. The due date for taxes is September 15th this year. Since the 14th fell on a weekend, we had to move it to the next business day. The community picnic prep is coming together well, and we are expecting a pretty good turnout and hopefully good weather. Ron has put a lot of work into it, and I just want to kind of give her props on what she's done.
Thank you, Laura. Jessica, any questions for Jessica before we move on? Okay. Next is the WDDA report. Josh, do you have anything you want to say there?
The Ford building, you've seen that in the alcove area, they got work actually done, they're able to matched up, so it looks like they didn't even have to replace the very, very crusty and cottage cheese lintels, in those spots. They're moving on to the front, so hopefully looks like they actually already have the scaffolding up there, so they're close to the sidewalk off during that time. And then they should have that, I mean, based on how long it took them to last, it would be less than 2 weeks for them to get that done. And then, the glass company will come in and put the glass in, like, pretty quick right after that. We're waiting for the plans for the Ford building. Hopefully within the next week or two, we'll have the finalized, we can go out to bid on those. And the Ford project will continue to move on. In the meantime, we'll give thanks to the DPW for getting rid of the arborvitaes. I met with Ryan, the member from the garden club, and Sam to try to start cleaning up the green space there in the corner. There were some arborvitaes, reduce some of the fencing there. And we're working on some pricing for surveying and pricing for fencing to get that done, and the parking lot fence to be put in too. And, but yeah, that's where we're at now.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Any questions from the council there? Okay. Next is the building zoning report. Jim's provided his report. Emily, do you have anything to add to building zoning?
Nope.
Okay. Next is the NISA report.
So we're still doing training. They just started a new class for the summer at Station 62. And then training for all, both stations are still continuing every 2 weeks. And so this past Tuesday, we actually had the privilege to take the boat out for training on the Red Cedar River over by McCormick Park. And everybody got a chance to drive it and be on it. So that was actually really interesting. And then for total fire calls so far for the year, our station had 203, Station 61 had 180, and altogether 383 fire calls so far between January and May. Wow. So, it's a lot. Yeah, we've been pretty busy. So that's all for me. We'll have a meeting on Thursday.
Awesome. Thank you, Sandra. Any questions for the NISA report? No? Next is the attorney report.
Thank you. Let's see, White Rose, it's an issue that's been pending for some time. Mr. Baldori, who is the attorney for White Rose as of now, I believe, is here in the audience with us today, and I think he has some interest in speaking later on. However, he did relay to me a message that there is a new offer from White Rose to settle this matter and to conclude the action that's now pending in the Michigan Court of Appeals that offers essentially $5,000 and the matter would be settled. Still recognizing the conditional zoning agreement, I suspect, of the White Rose and Village of Webberville's contractual agreement. That could be discussed further, as I know, as Mr. President's pointed out, that this is a item of new business section, or number 4, so we can get more details of that then. Eagle, I have not received any correspondence, any updates from Eagle. I don't know, nothing, okay, nothing from Mr. Jones either. So we're still in a pending situation with that because I do not have any formal documentation to give us directions as to where we're going. I apologize, I cannot remember from our last meeting whether or not I brought this to the council's attention. One thing that I have learned through, I don't know if anyone's heard around here, but Owasso recently raised their water rates. And it was a real point of contention based on the amount that it was raised. And in fact, the turnout by the citizens was high, I mean upwards of 300 people. And we had to move to a local auditorium to accommodate everybody because we still have to abide by Open Meetings Act. Whereby everyone has a chance to speak. And what I learned from that process is that, and I'm advising the other municipalities I represent that we should probably adopt high turnout council meeting procedures. Okay?
We did already.
Did we? Okay.
Yep.
All right. Good. All right. I'm glad to hear that because it's well worth it. So the only other thing that I have on my list of items is I'm still in a holding pattern on the 425 agreement as for what may develop out there.
Yes, I spoke to Richard from LEAP last night at the DEA meeting.
Okay.
And we're trying to get something scheduled for, I believe, next week or the following week. Just get all interested parties in the room and start working out details. So
Okay.
I'll be sure to include you on that.
All right, that's fine. I just want to make sure in case I missed something, I don't want to be up to speed on it. But that's all I have to report at the moment.
Excellent. Any questions for Scott? Okay. Next is engineering reports. PEA group is not here this evening, nor did they provide a report. So the last is advocate reports. Anything from the council for advocate reports? Okay. We'll move on to new business. First up is the cattle annual report.
Hi, thank you for having us. So I'm gonna start us off and then I'll turn it over to our head librarian. So my name is Jenny Marr, I'm the executive director. of the Capillary District Libraries. I've been with Cabell a little over a year now, so glad I was able to come out here. The rest of our team, we have 2 of our board members with us, Quinn O'Donnell and Sandy Drake. We also have our assistant director, Jolie Hamlin with us, and then Amanda Morse is the head librarian for the Webberville branch, so you probably know her because she's right next door. So I'm going to talk a little bit, just briefly, about how we've been doing. We have been very busy. Our numbers in 2024 are finally back up to where they were before the pandemic hit. So, you know, it's been a few years of recovery. We've been busy, but we're definitely picking up again. Overall in Cattle, we've had a 12% increase in people getting library cards. Our circulation overall is up 4%, so it's definitely been busy. Here at Webberville, people visiting the branch has gone up 3%, you know, from the previous year. But the circulation here has gone up even more. It's exceeded overall from Cattle. It's almost at 10% increase in number of items checked out. In your one sheet packet that you have, it has some of the statistics on there, and for the village of Webberville, if you look, you can see the taxes are collected through the township, and the revenue from 2024 was about $252,000. The value of the items just from your residents from the village is $274. So you're already getting more back than was collected overall for the township. So I just want to say your residents are very engaged. They're using the library. They're getting a great value for it. So we just wanted to let you know how much we appreciate their support and for all of you, being part of with us. In Cal, we're just finishing up our strategic planning process. We hope to have that published by the end of the summer. We'll be happy to send that out. If you want us to come back sometime, let us know for that. But for now, I'm going to have Amanda Morse come up and tell a little bit more about the fun stuff going on at the branch.
Hello. So again, it's been a very busy year. We have had the middle schoolers come, every class, come every other week. And this year, newly, we've had the high school freshmen. They've been coming every other week, which is wonderful because they don't have a library of their own at the school. And, it's always a hoot seeing them. And I have been visiting the preschool classes. And so it's been a very busy year, but summer to a librarian is like Christmas to Santa Claus. So now the real work has begun. We have, if you look on your sheet, you can see a bunch of Little Mermaids. So last summer, we had, every year we do our pop-up storytime series. And last year, that was our mermaid story time, which was in the middle of a heat advisory. We did it at a fishing hole out in Williamston, but it was very well attended and very sweaty, and a lot of fun. So this year, we are doing our pop-up story time series again. We just had our ambulance story time at the fire hall, which was wonderful. We started with 6 guest stars, paramedics and EMTs, and by the end of it, we only had 2, which just shows how important ambulances are to the kids. And then next week, we have a fairy story time at the Osame Lavender Farm. We have a laundromat story time the next week, which sounds crazy, but kids really very interested in laundry. And we have one at the book farm, and then one at McCormick Park with a yoga instructor, yoga story time. But that, so our pop-up story time series and all the other things that we have going on at the library are just, we always try to make sure that community is at the center of it, which you can see in our second picture when we did a story time with the Webberville Garden Club. You can see the ladies there. But yeah, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for all your support. It really, we always have, we have such a good relationship with the village, and yeah, so.
Well, thank you for everything you guys do, and thank you for coming tonight.
Yeah, our pleasure. And the full report should be on the website before the end of June, so you'd see all the branches and the full cattle report in any past year, so that's at cattle.org. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. Any questions from the council on cattle report? Okay, yeah, thanks again. All right, next on new business, we have the master plan discussion, and I'll let Emily kick that off.
Yeah, we have our survey that's currently open and ongoing, that'll close June 30th. As of today, we've received 22 responses so far. So that's a great start, we'd love to keep that going, so.
I'm sorry, how many responses?
22.
22.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'd love to keep that going, keep the momentum going, continue to reach out to your networks and let folks know that it's available and open. We love to hear people's feedback regarding the master plan. It's a super important process that determines, how land is used in your wonderful village. So, that is my update as of now. I'll be back here next month after the survey is closed with a kind of a summary report on that survey. And then in August, we'll start drafting some goals and objectives together and have a discussion on future land use and transportation. So that is my master plan report. So we'll keep going, and if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Perfect. Seeing no questions? No. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next is another item for Emily, which is discussion of the zoning amendments for donation bins and accessory buildings.
Yes, thank you. So we're going to start with accessory buildings first. So currently the Webberville zoning ordinance does not list a specific maximum height for accessory buildings, which are, things like for example, on a residential parcel would be something like a garage, like a detached garage or a shed. Buildings that are subordinate to the principal building. So the zoning ordinance doesn't have a maximum height listed. And so traditionally, McKenna and the village has interpreted that as meaning that the accessory building can be as tall as the principal building. It must meet the maximum height for the principal building, but it couldn't go any higher. So to kind of clarify the zoning ordinance a bit more and ensure that accessory buildings are actually subordinate to, the principal building on a lot, we have drafted a zoning ordinance amendment that has maximum heights for accessory buildings specifically. So on the first page, these are the maximum heights for the as currently written in the zoning ordinance for the different zoning districts. And on the second page, we have the draft zoning ordinance amendment that adds item number 4B4, the height, that's been added. So there's different height requirements in the different zoning districts for accessory structures, all of which are shorter than the current maximum height for the principal building. So that way the accessory building is truly an accessory rather than, being basically the same as the principal building. So if anyone has any questions about this or feedback on the heights that we've suggested, if you feel they should be taller, shorter, whatever the case may be, we're happy to answer questions on accessory buildings.
So the way the draft is written, I'm just trying to speed read this here.
Mm-hmm.
Is it's the height for item number 4, is that the proposed height restriction for accessory buildings? So it's just a flat.
Those are
It's not going to be in relation to the primary building height.
correct. Yep, it's only for the accessory building. So the maximum heights for the zoning district for principal buildings will remain the same. Accessory buildings now have their own maximum height limit.
Okay.
So I'm kind of unclear about this. So what you're proposing is if someone has a garage and it's the same height as their house, they would be in violation of the ordinance?
Not if it's attached. Typically attached structures, meet the same, because it's attached to the main building, and be the same, height as the principal building, but typically with detached structures, they're typically shorter than the main building.
Councilwoman Walters, are you talking about existing buildings now already constructed?
Yes.
So, in that situation, they would be non-conforming, but we could not go to that property owner and say, reduce the height. They would be, as they say, grandfathered in.
Gotcha. Okay, so it would be like new construction?
New construction.
Correct, yes.
Or possibly replacement construction. So if you had a non-conforming structure got blown down in a storm and there's nothing left, that's possibly they'd have to rebuild to the new standard.
I see.
Yep.
I see, okay.
Is there a current issue or a present issue as to why this has been brought forward, other than just for clarity of the ordinance?
That's a good question. I'm not sure. I think Jim brought it up to Chris.
Okay.
That's my understanding. I don't know if there's like a specific situation. I can find out more
Okay.
about that if you're interested.
Yeah, I mean, my opinion is, I like the idea of making it, the ordinance more clear as to what the restrictions are. I'm a little concerned about the restrictions themselves. I would be inclined to just make it match the height limit to what the current ordinance is, not to be any more restrictive than the primary building.
Okay. Currently, so how the zoning ordinance has currently been interpreted, that's how it's currently interpreted, is that the accessory building can't be taller, it has to meet the maximum height requirements for the district. If that's something that the village would like to keep that way, that's certainly possible.
Yeah, I mean, if that's been the interpretation, I would kind of like to stick with that and just maybe have that be the rule.
Yeah, you can certainly have that language in the zoning ordinance that, accessory buildings, must be within the maximum height requirements of the zoning. You can certainly do that. So if that's the direction that you would rather go, we can write it to say
Right.
that.
Yeah, so I speak from personal experience on the matter, which is since purchasing my home, I've constructed a garage. My primary home is 2 stories and has a steep pitched roof. And I believe the total height of that garage is around 24 feet or so, which matches the building, right? I think in those circumstances, if you have a tall building, to restrict it any shorter it may limit people with how they want their property to work.
Okay.
Well, that too, there's the case that if people would be grandfathered in, but if you don't change it, heaven forbid something horrible happens, like a fire, tornado, then they're going to have to adhere to these height restrictions when
Well,
they're building.
and that's the Scott's point earlier, is that they would be effectively, the layman's term, grandfathered in. So if you're replacing, if something happened, you could replace what was there.
To a certain extent. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know exactly
That's
what.
not what I read in that.
So, we could define it as to, whether or not you had a non-conforming structure and it was destroyed, whether or not that homeowner, property owner could construct to the original dimensions. If not, a lot of times, when you implement new restrictions in a building, a non-conforming building is completely raised, a lot of times you gotta build with a new code. But you could specify, you could say in the ordinance, if you had a known non-conforming structure is destroyed, you can replace it. You can allow for it to happen. So if you say nothing, then you're gonna be restricted to the new code.
Gotcha.
Just kind of give me
The way it
height,
is, just
yeah,
make it more.
Well, and I think the reality is, we're a small village with very few undeveloped parcels. And a lot of our parcels in town are rather small anyway, so I think it's just by that nature it'll be self-limiting, but those cases were to arise, I wouldn't want to deter our residents from pursuing their dreams.
Agreed.
Well, so it sounds like how the village wants to proceed is keeping it so accessory buildings just have to be within the maximum height requirements of the district, but just clarify that more in the zoning ordinance. Because currently it's been interpreted that way, but there's no clear language, I guess, that specifies how tall accessory buildings can be.
Right.
You can add that language saying that accessory buildings have to be within the maximum height in the zoning district to make that clear. But it sounds like you want to keep it so accessory buildings can be as tall as the principal building.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, agreed.
Yep.
Yeah, and then an older building that was taller could be grandfathered in and be replaced as the same building if
Right.
wanted. Yep.
Okay.
Well, that sounds good.
So do you want to bring back a final draft for approval next meeting, or?
Yeah, I can bring back a final, an update version next week, but what will have to happen prior to this being adopted is a public hearing.
Okay.
So you have to set a public hearing. You can either do that for this next meeting if you want to do it then, or you can do it,
15 days?
yeah, it's 15 days. You
We'll
have
do
to-
it for the first meeting in July, July 8th. Okay.
Okay. So we'll shoot for a public hearing, July 8th. Okay. If there's no more questions on accessory buildings, we can move on to donation bins.
I got one question about that. So would that go by tape measure of foundation to peak or eve, either one? Or let's say I had a yard that dropped off 6 foot.
Yep.
Can I build a building that other 6 foot would be the same height as my house? Or does it have to be peak, eve, a measurement of someplace off of grade?
Leave it to a builder to ask a good question.
Just saying.
So I can read how the zoning ordinance defines building height. So it's the vertical distance measured from the mean elevation, so that would be kind of the average throughout the property, of the finished grade line of the ground, about the front of the building to the highest point of the roof for flat roofs, or to the deck line of mansard roofs, or to the mean height level between eaves for, and ridge for gable, hip, and gambrel roofs. So for different types of roofs, it's measured differently. But as far as grade-wise, it's the average of the grade.
Interesting. Does that, like, I'll lean on your experience.
I can read that 2 different ways. I can go build a building to match my house and gain 6 foot of height if my grade dropped off. I'm just using a number.
Yep.
Or I've got to go from that grade to the eve, the same as my house is on this grade.
Mhm.
If that's 15 feet or, whatever, if my eve is it's not 15 feet tall building. If my eve is set at 8 foot, it's still got to be set at 8 foot, 6 foot down in my backyard or my parcel.
Gotcha. I guess the question is, our town's pretty flat.
I'm just throwing it out there because
No, it's a good-
there's gonna be a spot where somebody's gonna say, hey, well, my yard's this much lower here. Can I do this?
Sure.
I'm just-
It's a good point.
Or my house, or where I wanna build my garage is now on a hill behind my house. Do I have to build it shorter to match my house?
Right.
It's the finished grade line of the ground about the front of the building. So I'm guessing that means kind of the average of the finished grade at that like front building line.
If you think it's clear enough, it's clear enough. I'm just playing devil's advocate here.
I can picture lots in town right now that has that same exact problem, and we're gonna be discussing it here very shortly.
But if I understand this
These
right,
lots on North Main Street have
You're going to
significant
the front of
elevation
the-
change.
you're going to the front of the structure, off the ground, the grade, and you're running the tape up to the highest point of whether it's a ridge, gable, however you wanna do it. And then wherever you go to the next accessory structure, you're going from that grade, and you're running it up the equal amount of feet vertically. I mean, so it's not a visual like, you know, it's not like they have to be uniform sitting in the distance on the horizon.
They don't have to, but what I'm saying is because my lot is 3 foot, 4 foot lower, now I can add on to my garage height or my wall height.
I don't think
No,
no.
because you're going off that grade
Okay.
of the principal structure vertically up. So if your house is 20 foot tall, off the grade up the front of the house, and let's say you go back to the backside of the lot, and it's actually 5 foot lower, the grade drops off. But you're going from the grade at that point, 20 feet up from that point. Now, they're not gonna be uniform, they're gonna be sitting like this, but it's gonna be 20 foot on the principal, 20 foot on the accessory.
That's fine. That's fine. That just means that building's 5 foot lower than my house on the flat out there. And if that's the interpretation we're gonna use, that, I'm fine with it. I'm just saying that somebody's gonna say, well, okay, I can build my walls this much taller because I haven't gone higher than my primary building.
I see what you're saying. So do we want to add language in there so that you cannot exceed, an accessory building cannot exceed the total height of the primary building?
I think it already says that, doesn't it?
That's how it's been interpreted, although I guess I'm not sure in practice how that's worked itself out, because I've been here, but.
Josh, I can see you biting your tongue. I know you're on the DDA.
Yeah,
Is there, do you have
I'm just
a,
thinking aesthetic reason, but I also know that, like statistically, about 70% of houses are not ranch built.
Mhm.
So you would be, anyone that has a single level house would be limited with their garage size compared to everyone else. So I feel like anyone that has a smaller house, if you're, you know, I like it, how they put it with a general size height per lot instead of doing it by the principal. Cause I feel like that, isn't that what is proposing then?
Well, so what we've added is, what we propose to add is clear accessory building maximum heights.
Right, so it
But-
doesn't base it on the principal, it bases it just on the district.
Currently it's just based on the district. So let's say if you have a ranch house, you could conceivably build a detached garage up to 35 feet, even if your house is, I don't know, 15 feet, 20 feet, whatever.
Okay,
It goes by the maximum in the zoning district.
okay.
I don't know if that answered your question.
It kinda did.
Okay.
My concern was just like, again, it's, you know, if your neighbor has a 2-story house, they can build a
No, yeah, I don't think that's a
big pole barn. If
concern.
you're just a single level, you can't build a bigger building. And then, kinda like what Mike's saying, then you're trying to figure out what heights are. If you just do a maximum size for accessory building for the district, that's the max that they can go. And you're not having to worry about the distance of the primary structure. So that also matters.
so are you
what the
saying
aesthetics are.
to not make it related at all to the primary building?
I think that's something that you guys need to figure out aesthetic wise, but
Yeah.
I mean, I would hate to see like if someone buys a house in the community and then they're like, oh, I wanna build like a pole barn, and all of a sudden they're like told, you know, they're great assets to the community, they have kids, everything else, and all of a sudden they're like, hey, you can only build X size in the area because you only have a single story house.
If you're a single story ranch with a flat roof that's only 10 foot tall,
Right. Then all of a sudden they're like, all right, I'm gonna move somewhere else.
what if, now, I would agree aesthetics wise, if you have a single story ranch with a flat roof that's 10 foot tall, if you were to build a 35 foot tall pole barn, aesthetically it would look a lot, so I mean,
Yeah.
do we wanna make it as a percentage relevant to the primary building? So within the zoning restrictions, not to exceed 50% of the primary building. So if you have a 10 foot tall primary building, you can go up to 15 feet on your accessory.
But you can look at it too, is, I mean, the other part of that situation is you guys also have ability for variances too. So, I mean, if a, you know, resident comes in and says, hey, I wanna build a bigger building, if in the area it works, you guys would have the ultimate ability comfortably say, yeah, I think it would work for where your lot is. I mean, if his neighbor has a garage that's 35 feet tall, and he has one that's gonna, his max is gonna be like 12 feet tall, I mean, maybe it looks better if he has one that's equal to the size of the area.
Right.
I mean, that's just my,
Okay, so what we could, so we could explore at like a max, like 150% of the principal building. I think that could be fine. Currently, if we left it the same as it is and just add clarifying language that it can't, the accessory building has to be within the maximum height requirements of the district, it wouldn't restrict, like if you had a single story ranch versus a 2-story, it wouldn't matter, as long as, like, for example, in R1A, that accessory building is shorter than 35 feet. They're good, it doesn't matter how tall the principal building is. But if you're concerned about, having a giant pole barn next to a short ranch, you could add language like that for
Yeah.
150% of the principal building, or 200%, or whatever
Yeah.
percentage you think is appropriate.
And I fully understand that a lot of people listening, and maybe even sitting up here, are like, what's the reality of this ever happening? Probably zero. But how many times have we been burned by an ordinance that was created short-sightedly? So I'd like to be as thoughtful as possible about this and have it make sense.
well, and I can name, or I can even point out several, and I'm sure Ryan can too, several people that have decent sized barns compared to their houses, which, I mean, again, that's, my only concern is always keeping people here rather than them leaving.
But I think there is sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No, and if we can, like I said, even that sounds like as long as his neighbor, he's not building 20 feet taller than his neighbor, if it's a general conformed to the area, it'd make more sense than, I mean, if everyone, aesthetically, if everyone built, say, a 35-foot accessory building all on one block, it would look normal, even if the houses were different sizes, because all this general structure would be the same. Whereas if you have 2-story, just this random, but, I mean, that's, like I said, I more think it's, if people want to build something that suits them, as long as it's not deterring their neighbor's property, it's probably good.
So are you suggesting having language in there that over a certain height that they would need buy-in from neighboring properties where it's visible from or something?
That's usually what variance is, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's variance, if they want to go above and beyond what you're doing.
Okay, what I can do is I can bring maybe 2 different versions. The clarifying that, the one version clarifying that the accessory building cannot be taller than the maximum height in the district, and another version considering the height of the principal building and maybe doing 150% of the principal building. I can bring those 2 different versions and we can have further discussion and see what the council prefers. Does that sound like a good plan?
I'm on board with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone else?
Okay.
Yeah, and then obviously we'll set the public hearing, and then if the council members think about it in the next few weeks and think that it should be, that percentage maybe needs to be adjusted one way or the other, then we can do that during the meeting. I like it.
Okay, but we'll still plan on having a public hearing July 8th.
Yes.
Okay.
That work, Jessica?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just need a motion
Yep.
To
schedule a public hearing for the accessory building.
Okay. I recommend we set a public hearing for this discussion of the accessory building height restrictions for July 8th.
I second it.
So moved.
So moved, and I'll
Okay, I
second.
move.
And I'll second.
Second. Well, we'll do a roll call.
McHugh,
Yes.
Schoenberg? Yes. Stanfield?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Schultz?
Yes. Okay.
All right, so now we're gonna move on to donation bins. So there's an understanding the village is interested in exploring some zoning ordinance regulations and language, for donation bins. So the village isn't able to enact an outright ban on donation bins, so like the ones that you see often in like parking lots, these standalone bins. It's possible for the village to regulate them. So in this memo, I have some different zoning ordinance language from communities around Michigan, regarding, donation bins and how these municipalities are regulating them. Typically, the regulations that have been include, that a permit is required. They have, design standards for height, width, of these, donation boxes, location requirements, including, zoning districts they're permitted in, as well as, location, to like a principal commercial establishment, and language clarifying who is responsible for maintaining these bins. So we have ordinances from Frenchtown Charter Township and Lyon Charter Township. This language is currently in their zoning ordinances, to regulate donation bins. And then on page 5, we have draft zoning ordinance amendments related to donation bins. So we added a definition for donation bin in section 153.003. So we defined it, a donation bin as a mobile structure which is used to receive materials such as clothing and other household or office goods donated by the public. Does anyone have any questions about that definition or anything to add to that definition?
We have one donation bin, right? And it's at Dollar General.
I think there's,
There's 2 of them.
Is there 2 there?
Yeah.
I want to say, more than one.
Yeah, I think there's 2.
Okay, and they're the only ones in the village,
As far as I know.
to our knowledge. So,
There was somebody who has recently inquired whether or not they are permitted here, so I think that's why we're having the discussion. It's
okay.
somebody approached the village and said, is this something you guys allow? And it's brought to light that we don't have anything pertaining to donation bids in our ordinances.
Okay. Well, if no one has any questions or feedback about that definition, I'll move on to the regulations itself. So if adopted, these would be added to the supplementary use regulations in section 153.081. So donation bins are allowed as an accessory use to commercial buildings subject to the following standards. They would require a permit, so someone would have to submit a zoning permit application with the information requested in order to receive a permit to have a donation bin. A lot is allowed a maximum of 1 donation bin. Design requirements include that the donation bin shall be no larger than 5 feet in length, 5 feet in width, and 6 feet in height. The donation bin has to have a safety chute with a lock so that, like a kid couldn't crawl in the chute, or, people are taking stuff out of it. And only the person or the entity who's responsible for actually collecting goods out of the donation bin can access it once you put, the donated item in the chute. And then lastly, the name and phone number of the entity responsible for maintenance of the donation bin shall be visible on the exterior of the bin, so you can track down who is responsible for maintaining it if there's an issue. Location requirements, donation bins shall comply with the following location requirements. A donation bin shall be permitted only in the B1, B2, M1, and HC1 district. A donation bin must be accessory to and located within 100 feet of a principal building containing a business that accepts and processes donated goods. A donation bin shall be located on a surface of improved asphalt or concrete. A donation bin shall be located at least 20 feet from a public right-of-way and at least 10 feet from all other lot lines. Donation bins shall not be located in a public right-of-way, fire lane, or required parking space and shall not block any driveway, drive aisle, or entrance or exit to any building. And maintenance requirements. All donation bins shall be emptied on a regular basis so as to prevent the donation bin from overflowing. All donation bins must be regularly maintained and repaired so that the donation bin is free from visible or structural damage. The person, property owner, or entity listed on the exterior of the donation bin shall be responsible for all maintenance. So that is what we've drafted based on, best practices and things we've seen work in other communities. If anyone has any feedback or questions, I'm happy to answer.
So if we adopt this, we're gonna have to call whoever it is for the donation bins and have them remove one of them, right?
So that's a question for Scott, I guess, or Emily, as to whether or not they'd be kind of grandfathered in post-adoption of this.
Down to one.
Yeah, but I would think that any existing donation bins would be grandfathered in.
Yeah, I mean, that's the general rule. Usually if rules change and somebody's already established doing something, usually they're permitted to continue that structure, continue that, in this case, bin, until they remove it. And then when they removed one or both, they can never come back with two again. Then they'd have to live by the new set of rules.
Is it worth putting that in the ordinance? I know I've seen that in other ordinances to a similar effect of, existing donation bins are, permitted as is, but upon any changes
Or removal.
or removal has to default to the current adopted ordinance.
Yeah, I mean, that, to me, that's a little bit extra ink. It gives a clear path to anyone that is concerned with these items, that if you remove it, and there's two of them, you're never gonna have two again.
Right.
And I'm sorry if you mentioned this, was there any comment about the condition of the bins?
Yep, so
Okay.
the donation bin has to be regularly maintained and repaired so that the bin is free from structural or visible damage.
And where I was going with that, if you had someone that's already got two bins and they're holding on to the fact that they got two bins, they're running that thing, it's rusting, it's falling apart, but they don't wanna get rid of it. That's all.
Well, in that case, would they be able to substitute a new bin?
No,
It would go,
if
automatically it would default to one bin only if they removed it.
if there was two bins and one was in such disrepair that it was, in violation of that ordinance, we could instruct them, hey, you're gonna remove that, bin that's in disrepair, and now you've gotta live with just the one from here on out.
They can't bring in a new one to replace their bad one?
That's right.
Okay.
My concern with that is I can't see them agreeing to just one bin there.
Right. When it's the only place in town.
Most places have two bins.
My concern is if you take one bin away from out there, you're gonna see that much more trash just sitting in the parking lot than what's already sitting there with two bins.
Well, and that's, I think, exactly why with maintenance, it says it has to be regularly maintained, so that it's not overflowing.
Gotta have somebody police it though.
And that's why we have code enforcement, and my comment to the very last sentence is, it says the person, property, or entity listed. I would want it to be on the property owner, because generally, in my experience, is a lot of times these entities operate, non-locally or even out of state. And when there's an issue, it can be very, very difficult to track them down and hold them accountable.
Yeah.
So I would want to make that very specific, that the property owner has to be made aware that, look, if there's structural issues or garbage overflowing, they're the ones that we're going to be going to our own hook for it.
Okay, we can, definitely make that change.
Okay.
Isn't there something though that we can put in there if the one is not in great shape now, that they have X amount of days that they can exchange it for a different one?
I mean, what would the purpose
I'm just thinking if we're going to put this into an ordinance that says that they can't, you know, once it's gone, it's gone. So if we're gonna put this into an ordinance and they're coming back and saying, wait a minute, this one's in really bad shape, you know, we need to replace it. Can't we just put something in that says
They can
they
replace
have
it.
this many days to
Right.
replace it so that they can keep those two?
Well, if the number's of concern, or if it's one or two, I mean, you could say you're allowed to have two bins.
Yeah, for
I
sure.
mean, I think this is just a proposal, I don't think, I mean, you get to decide whether it's two or three or.
I, personally, I don't want to, but that's a council decision. If the whole council as a whole wants to,
I just don't see them agreeing to one, because whoever's coming out to empty it, I just don't see them, they're probably gonna say, you want us to go out there and empty just one? I don't know who it is that's emptying it, but
I personally think if you're grandfathered in, you have the right to replace that if one goes bad, it's rusted out. You have the right to be able to replace it and maintain your two. You don't get to add another one and become three. But I don't think you need to drop down to one. If you're grandfathered in with two, you get to stay two as far as I'm concerned. That's my thoughts.
And as to the one or two, I don't know if it's, I'm just speculating, but maybe the reason why they're using two is because there is a cost analysis of which whatever organization's out running trucks picking up these donations, it only makes mathematical sense to have, you know, two bins at every location to fill that truck through a route. So I'm just,
Right,
there may be a reason why there's two.
Right,
with-
instead of coming out every other week or every third week, they come out maybe once every 2 months.
Could be, I don't
You know, it might be a cost effect thing.
I think too, and Mike has a great point, is if there's one, then people are just gonna leave stuff laying all over the outside. I've seen it, you know, when they're both are full, they are leaving things outside. And if one is in bad shape and they have to have it taken away and they are put down to one, the amount of things on the outside, it can become a lot.
But you're never gonna get away from that no matter what you do, because
you won't.
people can't read what it says
You are
on the
correct
thing,
in
just
that.
put in it.
Right.
It
Absolutely
doesn't say to
correct.
put tricycles outside of
No.
it and baby beds and
No.
whatever, you know.
Well,
There's
that's-
a list of what's supposed to be in it and what's not.
That is
well, that's
correct.
exactly it, is I would welcome anybody to point towards a donation bin that's never had that issue. Unfortunately, people, whether or not they're being generous and are doing it unknowingly, or people just use them as convenient trash dumps, that's generally what these things turn into.
I agree.
Frankly, it's unsightly, it attracts rodents and other sorts of nuisance animals that. Personally, I would be fine if the council wants to, grandfather in the one location that has two bins, okay, but I wouldn't wanna make it two bins across the board.
No,
No, I'm just saying for them, because they should be
No, just
grandfathered.
if a bin goes bad, that they would have the right to replace that bin, maintaining the two bins.
Yep.
Or bins,
That's fine.
okay.
Yeah, I think I'd have to look a bit more into your non-conformities section, because at that point, I think, you know, this would be a legal non-conformity if this were adopted. And at what point a bin would have to be completely removed or not. I don't know if
I mean, isn't there just like a creative way to write the language such that any existing entities that are non-conforming with the number of bins may continue to do so?
Is this a permit system? I apologize.
yeah,
Okay, so you're gonna have a record, so if this were to be adopted hypothetically, everyone who has an existing bin is still gonna have to get in here and sign their name and say, hey, I've got two bins at this location. And that's gonna be your record going forward, because you're gonna see the date at which they got the permit, and it would say two bins if it were happening today. Any subsequent person seeking a permit would then come in, they would only be allowed one, and that would be disclosed on that permit, and that's how you'd probably be able to keep track of the grandfather, because if there became an issue, the code enforcement man or woman could come in here and say, okay, oh, this was this is a grandfather issue, this date's set here, they're allowed to replace it, so. I mean, I don't know how else you really monitor it, because these things are pretty mobile.
Okay, so it sounds like, so we'll add some clarifying language about grandfathering. And then change the maintenance responsibility from whoever's listed on the box to just the property owner. Was there anything I missed?
My only other comment would be about the zones is, I would think we'd want to remove M1.
Okay,
I don't see how it'd be appropriate to have a donation box in industrial areas,
okay,
like the business park.
yeah.
Does that make sense to everybody?
Okay.
We can do that.
So it would be B1, B2, and highway commercial, which is that little pie out on the highway.
Perfect. All right, we'll make those changes. And then, the next steps are similar to the accessory structures. You have to have a public hearing, before adoption. You could have that at the same July 8th hearing, so, you would just need to make a motion.
So I recommend that we set a public hearing for donation bins on July 8th.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call.
McEwen,
Yes.
Schoenbrood,
Yes.
Stanfield,
Yes.
Walton,
Yes.
Schulte.
Yes. Okay. Is that everything, I think?
As far as zoning ordinance amendments, yes.
Yes. And I see on the back, there's a lot split permit that's not on the agenda. Is that,
It's gonna be something else.
oh, that's item 6, 725?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha, misread that. Okay, moving on. Item number 4 is the White Rose litigation. So,
Mr. Baldori, if you
Sure.
take it. Hi, everyone. As you know, I'm here on behalf of and Mr. Jay Rittman, who's in attendance today. I was brought on board for 2 reasons, essentially. One, to see if we can bring the property into conforming use across the board, and then also potentially resolve the litigation that's been ongoing for quite some time. I've been working with Mr. Gould on both of those topics. I believe we had conveyed an offer a few weeks ago through Mr. Gould of $4,000, but we weren't in attendance at a hearing or at the meeting, and it wasn't clear to me. I learned secondhand that it may have been rejected. I wasn't here, so I don't know, but regardless, currently the offer is $5,000 to resolve the outstanding litigation. I understand it's on appeal currently. We've provided certain extensions to allow time for presenting an offer and potentially considering any counteroffers that may be made. I have not received anything to that effect. I do think that that both parties have an interest in potentially resolving this before letting it go to the Court of Appeals and whatever further litigation may occur. I think that Mr. Gould is more than capable of advising everyone on what those interests may be. If we agree to a certain amount, obviously there can be a time frame, it's a specific amount, and it can be conveyed. There's also, who knows what can happen on appeal, and then collecting a judgment is a whole separate matter. But if we were able to come to a resolution on this, it'd be a gesture to move forward in good faith. And that's also what we're trying to do in regards to our efforts to satisfy the village in regards to the property's current status. I can go into further detail on that, but the main purpose of our attendance here today is in relation to the outstanding litigation that's currently pending. So if there's any further questions you have for me, I'm open to that. And I mean, at this time, Mr. Baldori, I kind of gave the rundown of what I thought the council was concerned with, and I will advise the council that we have the ability, because this is pending litigation, to go into closed session. But by having him here today, if there's any questions you may have as council members, you may want to ask me now. And I guess because this has gone on for so long, and he's willing to spend time here addressing any issues, if there's any concerns or reservations you have, I'm okay with the village asking him questions. However, the final internal decision on whether to accept the offer, reject the offer, or provide a counter offer, I would advise we go into closed session, but that can be handled after you have any questions for Mr. Baldori.
Great.
Okay. So, I don't think that, I have any questions. I've been tracking this one closely. I think I'm brought up to speed, but I welcome the rest of the council members to ask any questions.
As you're thinking about it, I'll give you the latest update as to where I stand on the matter. So, I believe it was probably 3 weeks ago, I had to supply the Court of Appeals with an answer to the appeal. And my initial intention was to, I did in fact, reach out to Attorney Kumar. How did I forget that? Mike Kumar. And I asked for that 28-day extension. There seemed to be some reservation, I don't know, but he was going to get back to me. I think there was no objection, at least Mr. Baldori, he said there was no objection 28 days. However, I did furnish that answer to the Michigan Court of Appeals. The reason was that, and this is no offense to Mr. Baldori or to Mr. Rittman, it's just a little challenging on my end when you've got multi-attorneys, and I don't know exactly their relationships, but I couldn't run the risk of not knowing what was going on first, so I just put the answer in. The second reason I put the answer in is there was some procedural issues with the appeal that I couldn't, in good conscience, just sit back and wait on. As a fiduciary, as an attorney representing this village, I thought that I had to provide the answer, and I also put forth a motion because of this procedural problems I've seen with the Court of Appeals, or with the appeal. So those are my reasons for filing that answer. However, with that being said, as we're waiting for the Michigan Court of Appeals to give me an answer as to my motion and as to the larger issue at the bar, we can still negotiate. So if the council is at all inclined to try and come up with some resolution to finalize this matter, be on our way, that's well within your power, I would just advise we do it in closed session, that segment of this. So I relinquish my time for anyone that may have questions for Mr. Baldori.
Well, something right now.
My last comment would just be, there's certain outstanding issues that we're working with Mr. Gould, Jim Wright, on resolving in relation to the property. So there's good faith effort on the part of Mr. Rittman and Webberville's realty to try to make sure this doesn't happen again, end up in further litigation that's going to cost everyone money. And again, I can't quite speak to the history of this. I was brought on at a point with the intention of trying to resolve this, because frankly, Mr. Rittman is like, I don't know why this has gone on so long. I do want to genuinely resolve this and make sure my property's in good standing so I don't have to do this anymore and waste resources on both sides. So that is why we're here. And I'm going to stay in communication with Mr. Gould. And again, if our offer is not accepted, any counter offer will be, communicated. So I appreciate it.
And I will say, Mr. Baldori has been great to work with. I think he is a formidable opponent. I think he is well versed in what's going on here. And I believe it when he says that they're coming here in good faith. He's done nothing that suggests anything to the contrary. So
I've not been around long enough to be part of a closed session. Scott, would this happen if we were to move to closed session immediately following this action, or would that be at the end of this meeting?
I've seen it where councils will vote to go into closed session and be the last item of business So you guys could, for the convenience of the community and everyone else, you could finish up whatever last tasks you have, go into closed session, or you could go into closed session now, come back out, and then finish up the remaining items of business, so choose. So however you structure the motion.
I'd like to finish out the meeting, so that way everybody online and who's present can see that through, and last item, the closed session. So I assume that's just as simple as a motion and a vote.
That's correct.
Recommend that we go into closed session as the last item for this evening's agenda, immediately following item number 6.
Motion to approve.
So moved by Mike, is there a second?
Second.
Second. Do a roll call.
Hewitt,
Yes.
Schulborn,
Yes.
Stanfield,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Schultz.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will continue with the rest of our meeting, which brings us to item number 5, which is the Beach Street stop sign. So, I guess I'll kick things off with a little bit of history here. A few weeks ago, and even outside of that, we've had a number of residents living on North Main Street who have come to the council with concerns about traffic, particularly with speeding and just generally inappropriate driving behavior. Somebody did mention installing one or multiple stop signs at one or multiple intersections along North Main. After talking with Ryan and PEA Group, it seems like that is something that is within our purview as a council to do. In fact, we own some stop signs already, so it would be as simple as voting on where to put them. We'd have to do a misdig, DPW installs them, and we would have to put up some sort of signage indicating new traffic pattern. That said, last meeting I did mention that a company called Traffic Logics did reach out to me for a follow-up on a request I made to them 2 years prior about removable rubber speed bumps. And I had a fantastic conversation with that gentleman and learned a lot more about what their company offers in terms of solutions. And I think he made an excellent point, which is particularly in small communities and side streets, there you can have a real and present issue with traffic or a perception of an issue. I think we all have experienced, you're walking down the sidewalk and a big truck goes by at 35. Well, it seems like they're going faster than that, but in reality, they may not be. So one of the solutions that they offer is basically traffic data. So you can purchase like what they call a black box or a speed sign similar to what we have on Grand River as you head into town coming west, which would incorporate that black box. Now that black box would provide data such as the number of vehicles passing by, the speed of each vehicle, so you'd get a minimum and a maximum speed, some really good analytics in there. There's also a stealth mode in those signs, recognizing that those flashing, when it tells you your speed, that's obviously intended to change your behavior as a driver, so you can turn that off so you're getting actual behavior unaltered on the street. So I'm a big proponent of making data-driven decisions, and at this point, we're getting a lot of anecdotal data from the community that there's a problem, and I'd really like to understand, with hard evidence, does that issue exist, how bad it is, and maybe we can sharpen our pencil a little bit more and make sure that whatever enforcement mechanisms we want to put in place are not just the appropriate solution, but also in the correct areas. Prevents us from maybe installing a stop sign at the wrong intersection or putting speed bumps in the wrong area. So those solutions range in cost anywhere between $2,500 and $3,500, which is similar to when we looked at quotes for just getting another speed sign, which all it does is show you your speed. So I wanted to add that aspect to the discussion of we may want to consider getting some data on this before acting. The nice thing, in my opinion, is if the village were to purchase those signs, they're movable. So as we continue to get complaints from residents, we can move those around town and kind of help slow down traffic and get data. I think an added benefit is particularly for the downtown core. I know we've had a lot of businesses that say, oh, you guys don't have enough traffic for us to be there. Well, we would actually have analytics on how many cars are actually driving through our community on a daily basis. The advice that I was given regarding addressing speeding issues, which I think is wise, is that stop signs tend to they can be frustrating for drivers. Similarly with speed bumps, you know, they work, but they're not without unintended consequences, particularly for emergency responders. There are solutions to get around that as well. Unfortunately, I did not get those quotes in time to include them in the packet. Could certainly have them for next meeting if that's something that we want to look into, either prior to stop signs or in addition to.
So are you gonna put two of these things up, one going north and one going south? So you can see the traffic from both ways?
We could do that.
So now we're spending $6,000?
And that's about what the quote was for you.
Ish.
Yeah. And I know the question did come up about, from the council, how well do these things actually work? I asked the question, and I appreciated the honesty from the salesman that he's not seen a single study that has shown one way or the other that these types of signs are effective. Because it really depends on the community and the street. Because I've seen it where they work phenomenally, because I've also seen them where they don't work at all. So take that as you may.
At least he was honest.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And we already have stop signs.
Do we have money in the budget for 2 signs?
Yeah, I mean,
Something that,
$6,000 is not, you know, an insignificant amount, but it's certainly, we have that in the general fund. Wouldn't put us in the red by any means. I don't know if we have to talk to Caitlin to see if we can take anything out from general or major streets, and kind of spread it out across those budgets. But yeah, I'm confident that cost would not be an issue in that regard.
okay.
But again, we're taking money away from other things that need money, like our roads and our sidewalks and whatever. I mean, it's $6,000.
Yep.
But it's $6,000.
Exactly.
We have 2 stop signs that we can put up. If it doesn't appear that it's helping and we're still getting complaints, then we could go this route.
Yeah.
We can revisit those.
I mean, if the general public says, hey, the stop signs have helped, and maybe you won't hear anything out of them because it has helped. I don't know, but
Yep.
money's tight.
Yeah, that's,
There's
there's
other things that
definitely,
need it.
there's that trade-off, and like I said, we can do this and or, you know.
I've had a lot of conversations with people in the concerned neighborhood, mainly up on North Main Street. A lot of conversations with homeowners. We need to have some action. I don't believe it's a perceived problem of speeding. I do believe it is a problem of speeding. I'm working on these roads every single day. I've done this job long enough. No, I'm not a built-in radar gun. But speed is speed.
You can tell.
Our budgets are so tight right now for very low-cost investment.
Yep.
To show action to the citizens of this community. I firmly believe we need to start and attempt stop signs. They don't work, we can take them down.
Do you have the signs also for, to say, new sign ahead?
I have them sitting in my shopping cart with the sign company that we buy our signs from. I don't even think I have $200 invested.
Exactly.
So, to show the citizens of this community immediate action, especially this time of the year, where speeding is generally higher as opposed to in the wintertime, in my opinion, we need to move on this and move faster rather than say, well, we're gonna collect data for 3 months.
You
and
got
then
more
make a
people
decision.
outside right now and
Right.
kids riding bikes and whatever, right?
And then we're into fall and winter time, and then who knows the effectiveness of the traffic control devices.
Summer is the worst for
So,
speeding.
are we thinking that Beach Street where it kind of chicanes there a little bit?
Beach and Main would be number one. I have had multiple homeowners also ask about Pine in North Main as well.
Okay.
That way they're forced to double stop, because it is a long, straight, very smooth section of road up there.
Yep.
And people are flying.
So, should we roughen up the road?
No, I don't wanna do that.
Would we do a yield at Pine in Maine and a stop at?
Yield, I wouldn't go with a yield,
Okay,
because there's already a stop sign coming off of Pine, so yield is only yield to another vehicle that's there already. I would stop them completely.
Yeah.
And we do have some changes coming up in our sheriff's contract and our staffing in the village. The end of this month, we do have some staffing changes. I've had some very good conversations with the officer that's gonna come onto the day shift and with the night shift. I think it's something that, to show the citizens of this community that this council, you know, the village employees, that we hear them, we recognize the problem, and we can move relatively cheap on this. And move right now, as
it's no
opposed
brainer in
to,
my mind, but.
and I agree.
So, do we want to start with just Beach Street, see how that goes, and if it continues to be a problem, or if it,
That's up to council. I would do both. If I was doing, I'd do both. That way we know right here, right now, these summer months, we're slowing these people down.
So that's
And then-
Beach and Maine and Pine and
Pine.
North Main.
Yes.
Okay.
And that gives them time. School's gonna be starting up sooner rather than later.
Mhm.
Gives these people time, hey, we have to slow down. This is not only a school zone, but we have people out walking.
Mhm.
If it doesn't work, fine, we take them down at the end of the year and we pursue another option, and we really don't have anything invested in this.
so, Ryan, can you give us a ballpark on, because we only have 2 signs, right? We would need to buy 2 more?
$400 ballpark. That will be warning signs that there's new signs ahead. And if, at worst, if I have to buy 4 brand new signs, I just have to check the manufacturer date and the reflectiveness of the signs that I have in stock. I do believe they're still legit.
So if I make a
We need
recommendation,
$400.
not to exceed 500 and get it done?
Yep.
Recommend to the council that we approve installing stop signs on North Main, at Beach Street and Pine Street, headed north and south, to be done by the DPW, not to exceed $500, and include signage for new traffic pattern.
Full move.
Second.
Roll call.
McEwen,
Yes,
Shuttleworth,
Yes.
Stanfield,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Schulte.
Yes. Last thing I will say on that topic, I don't want to detract from the good conversation. Since Ryan brought up the point about the sheriff contract, one other aspect of these signage and monitoring devices that really struck a chord with me is the fact that we all know we can only have sheriffs monitor certain areas at certain times, is because you get data for each vehicle each time. If we were to make the investment and we can show, okay, on this road, between 7:30 and 8 a.m. on these days, we can then that information and give to the sheriffs that, hey, look, there's probably only 1 or 2 culprits, and they're usually in this area at this time, so we're using their time more wisely as well. And something that I'll look into is, it's possible the sheriff's department may already own things like this, so we may be able to rent or borrow. And then I'll also talk to Andy to see if we were to purchase something like this, if we could maybe work that into the contract such that they're helping kind of sponsor this, because it's a tool they're going to be able to use as well. So that'll help mitigate some of the costs. But more on that. Right. Next, we have to set a public hearing for a lot split for 725 North Main. So this was in our packets.
Yeah, I can speak to this.
Okay.
So, the village received an application for a lot split at 725 North Main, into 2 similarly sized parcels. One is 1.9 acres and one is 1.9 acres. The resulting parcels would, both exceed the minimum lot width and lot area, so they would be buildable lots. The one issue is that in reviewing the application, we discovered that the lot split would result in 2 split zone parcels. So both parcels would have portions that are zoned R1A and portions that are zoned R1B. So for clarity's sake and to avoid any like zoning complications, we would recommend that the parcels be rezoned to either one or the other. Probably like the R1A, but that's up to the village council, what they feel is more appropriate. The only difference between those 2 zoning districts is that 2-family dwellings are allowed in R1B, whereas they are not allowed in R1A. But otherwise, the dimensional standards like setbacks and lot coverage are the same. So the options that the village council has tonight, they would need to set a public hearing for a rezoning. You could approve the lot split tonight and schedule the public hearing for the rezoning and do the rezoning after the public hearing, or you could wait on approving the lot split until the rezoning is complete. That's up to the village council. But otherwise, we would recommend the approval of the lot split application. The rezoning and split zoning issues would just need to be resolved at a future public hearing. So if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer.
So 15 days on this one as well?
Correct.
Okay. I recommend the council that we set a public hearing for the 725 North Main lot split for July 8th.
Okay. Second.
Roll call.
McEwen.
Yes.
Schoenberg. Yes. Stanfield.
Yes.
Walker.
Yes.
Yes.
So we'll have that public hearing for the rezoning, and then we'll, at that point, discuss the approval of the actual lot split. Does that sound good?
Yeah, works for me.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, since we are at the end of our meeting, before we go into closed session, I would like to open this up for public comment again at 7:28. Yep.
Oh, you've already voted to spend the money. Why can't we just have a sheriff's deputy sit on the corner of Pine Street for an hour or so? Of Pine and Main Street. I have seen that work. Of people running the stop sign at Howard and Pine. And all he does is sit there for 45 minutes to an hour. He's done that for 4 times. And there's absolutely nobody that runs that stop sign anymore. Why couldn't he set out, say at the corner of Main Street and Pine, he can run radar both directions? Instead of spending the money on stop signs.
Okay.
And do we have 4 stop signs?
I have at least 2. I haven't counted exactly how many I have, but I do have. I do have
So
some.
potentially going to have to buy 2 more.
Yeah.
Anything else, Dan? Okay. Yep. Any other public comment? Okay. Just answer those questions that came in. More than happy to direct the sheriff to Pine Street as an area of focus. Fortunately, can't be there every day all the time. So I'll definitely have that discussion, especially as we onboard the new sheriffs, but keep on keeping on. So those are my only comments. At this point, we are at the end of our agenda, and we will be moving into a closed session. So at this time, we will end the live stream. I will ask everyone but the council and our attorney to leave the room.